Peace and power, reparations now. This is Brother Jumoke Ifitayo. I'm the host of Reparations Now podcast. And I know I often say I'm excited about our next guest that we have today, but I am really, really honored and really, really, really excited about our guest for today. Someone who's a real champion of our people, who has built institutions, has built organizations, has worked locally, has worked internationally to advance liberation for people of African descent, built solidarity with different organizations, formations around the world. We are excited and glad to have Chairman Omali Yeshitela as our guest today. We ask you to take a minute to like and share, subscribe to our channel. This is important as we grow this channel and become more and more effective in getting the word out of this work that we do around reparations. How are you doing today, Chairman Omali?
Uhuru, I'm quite well. Thank you so much, my brother. How are you?
I'm good. Uhuru. Yeah. So we like to get started the way we usually do is we ask our guests to share what you feel is important about your life story. What is it that you feel that people should know about your story and some of your accomplishments? And as well as how did you get involved in the reparations movement? And we know that you've prepared a very thorough slide presentation, so we're going to be able to go systematically through all of the work that you have done. Probably not all of the work, some of the work that you have done on your reparations journey. But first, let's just hear from you to give us a little of your own story that you would like to share.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you very much, and I want to really salute the work that you do. I think is extremely important for us to engage in this war of ideas that we have to participate in because the problem that we face most of the time has a lot to do with the fact that somebody else controls the narrative and someone is able to define reality for us. And so this incredibly important kind of work that you do to engage in this war of ideas, and that's what it is. So I appreciate, having the ability to be here and to talk to you. I think it's worth mentioning that I'm 83 years old. I was 83 in October. And the thing that makes this significant, it's worth, I guess, appreciating simply because for African men and African people in general, but especially African men, I guess to live this long, it's remarkable. It's something to speak to just because of the kinds of conditions that our people are confronted with here and around the world. Where in the United States, I think we have something like a 6 or 7 year difference in the lifespan of Africans and white people. And in places like Sierra Leone, I think the average lifespan is something like 37 years old. So to be 83, I guess, is something to remark about. But for me, the significance of being 83 years old is the fact that we get born into situations that appear to have always been the way it is. And we don't come ready, armed, and informed about the history of events and things. And so this is something that the United States government takes advantage of. A man named George Orwell wrote a long time ago in a book called 1984 that I really think people should look at even now. But he said that one of the characters that who controls the past controls the future, and who controls the present controls the past. And what the United States and most colonial powers have done is that they have distorted what the past has always been about. And people, as I said, get born into situations that appear to be like this all the time. As many of your listeners may know that, and we will be saying some more about this moving forward, that the United States government attacked our movement, our struggle, the struggle of our people for freedom, for happiness and return of stolen resources on July 29th, 2022, with an attack on us and actually put us, charged us with criminal offenses that said during the charges, what they call the overt acts that constituted the crime, and I actually on a trial that we had to endure, said that it was the Russians who created the reparations issue for us. It's the Russians who promoted the reparations thing for us. And it's really important to be on this Reparations Now podcast, because most of your listeners and participants are quite aware that the struggle for reparations did not get started in Russia. It got started among African people here, because we are the victims of the colonial oppression and terror, not the Russians. And so I think it's really important to say that in the 83 years that I've been alive, I cannot think of a single day, not one day out of the 83 years of my life, where African people were not experiencing oppression, exploitation, theft of our resources, terror in so many different ways all the time. And I began to actively get involved in the reparations issue in 1976. This was a time where the Puerto Rican Socialist Party had initiated a process to build a movement called reparations, bicentennial. This was a bicentennial year, 200 years after the founding of this entity that we know as the United States. And the Puerto Ricans then, as now, were struggling for independence. And I thought this is an extremely important question, because the sector of our movement at that time that fought for independence, that struggled against colonialism, had been crushed militarily. By that I mean by gunpoint and other means of force. The fact is, Malcolm had been assassinated, King had been assassinated, many members of the Black Panther Party had been assassinated, people had been imprisoned, etc. And what had replaced this demand, this incredibly important demand for independence, for freedom, for absolute control of our own destiny, our own lives, that has historically represented one of the two trends in our movement. Now it had been replaced with leaders that had been chosen by the United States government, and with a movement that no longer called for freedom, no longer called for independence, but now was talking about how we had to fight against racism, and we had to fight to get our oppressors to like us more, which is essentially all the anti-racism struggle was about. And so when we participated with the thing that attracted us to the Mexican initiated movement of bicentennial without colonies, by not Mexican, but the Puerto Rican Socialist Party, is the fact that they were addressing the colonial question. And we wanted to reintroduce the colonial question back into the African liberation movement, which was fundamentally important. Because, as I said, it had been replaced by this issue of fighting against racism, fighting to make the white man like us, fighting to be able to integrate into the system of oppression and exploitation. And they'd kill Malcolm, kill King, kill members of the Black Panther Party, kill the co-founder of the African People's Socialist Party. And they had these other forces that were supposed to be representing freedom for us. And so that was the reason we got involved. And during this process of preparing for this bicentennial without colonies, there were conferences and meetings that were held in various places. And one of the bicentennial was to be in Philadelphia. And one of the issues that came up during this process, and it was brought forward probably by the African People's Party, which was an incredibly significant anti-colonial organization at that time, that we were talking about what kind of demands should come out of this rally, bicentennial without colonies. And the one question came up was the question of reparations. And the white left that was in that meeting and that played a big role in making that conference happen, making that rally happen, characterized our demand for reparations. They characterized it as being a part of a lunatic fringe, that this issue of reparations was lunacy, they said. So it began for me in 1976, and we pursued it in 1976, 1980, 81. I was on a panel, I was on a discussion, a rally in New York with Queen Mother, no, it was Comrade Sister Dorothy Lewis. And she and I sat next to each other. There were other people in this thing. Emiri Baraka was one of the people. I think Chokwe Lumumba was there. This other brother, other people. And so, you know, I told Sister Dorothy at that meeting that by 1982, we're going to make reparations a household word, and that we're going to do something about it other than just talking about it. So that's sort of how we got involved in this question. 1981, the first Congress of the African People's Socialist Party, which was held something like 9 years after our founding, we passed a resolution to win reparations for African people. And so that's sort of how we got involved in that. Uhuru.
Uhuru, thank you. You know, whenever we interview our elders, you know, we realize that the stories are rich and profound, and you'll bring in, you know, the history or our story. I like to say you bring in context, and that's important. And I think that one of the things I'm thinking about now is we have to consider whenever we have our elders on that have rich history in this movement, we might have to do a part 1 and a part 2, because you have so much to share with us, and we want those stories, and we want to capture those stories in that context. So at this time, let's go ahead and move into the slide presentation to kind of guide your conversation even further and deeper in this process. And
let me say this, moving in that direction. First of all, it was important for us to do the reparations struggle, because it was during the 1980s that we were talking about, early in the 1980s. This is when the first Make America Great Again president, Ronald Reagan, came onto the scene. He was the one who initiated the war against the Black Panther Party. He was the one who characterized African people as being welfare queens, African women being welfare queens. There was a real ideological offensive being waged against African people, saying that somehow we were an economic drag on the economy, and that white people were really tired of having to carry us, and that we're living off the welfare of white people. That was really important. We had people like Patrick Moynihan, who became a senator out of New York, was a really influential guy who put forth the whole premise that the U.S. government should resort to benign neglect when it comes to African people, that we had some issues and problems that were pathological, and they related to matriarchy. He said that African, because we are matriarchal with the leadership of women, said because Africans also work collectively with the group, and we require group success as opposed to individual success, that they saw as something that was necessary. This competition between individuals is what would represent progress, what would make progress happen. So this was another ideological basis for it. And the reparations demand, of course, is one that shows that that it is not we who have lived off the welfare of white people, but just the other way around. There's been white people, the white society, the colonial society that has lived off the welfare of African people. It's been a parasitic relationship that they suck the blood, the resource, the happiness, and the future away from African people. And this is the responsibility. This is how they got to be wealthy. So the reparations issue for us was profoundly significant, had ideological significance, had political significance, et cetera. So I just wanted to add that. I think it's really important to know that none of what we do happens in a vacuum. that happens within a political context, and we exist as African people in the world. When we started with the reparations issue, people were talking only about reparations for slavery. Our investigation showed that the rate of exploitation, the rate of theft of African people was greater subsequent to slavery. That it's not just slavery that we are talking about, all of the other things that's happened to us, the actual theft of life. When I talk about, when we talk about things like that, the infant mortality rates and all other kinds of associated things, the insurance fraud that's typical and historically significant to African people, the unequal pay for work, et cetera, all of that stuff, had to do with the theft of value from African people. So it's much more involved, and that's the way we took it on. So anyway, we took on this demand for reparations to African people, and this is one of the things that the United States government charges us with being Russian agents, because we raised the reparations issue. Like I said, this is an old issue in the African community. So we actually put on trial and actually convicted of the lesser of the two charges. One was being Russian agents, and the other was being conspiring to be Russian agents. So a jury on September 12th found us not guilty of being Russian agents, but they found us guilty of conspiring to do something that never happened. That is to say, be Russian agents. So let's move with the PowerPoint. So we fought for reparations. What we thought was really critical is that the reparations, for it to be even feasible, had to become a household word, that African people have to unite with this demand. It can't just be something that a handful of organizations participated in. And so this reparations demand was quite serious, because the attack on our movement, our party, they looked at what they call overt acts. And the overt acts was the election that we participated in, running two people for office on the reparations platform in 2017 and 2019. This was one of the overt acts. And what that meant was, what's so critical is that reparations demand is a criticism of the treatment of African people by this government. And so the thing is that they want to mute that criticism. They want to still that criticism. This is what we're looking at now is some hours after the attack on my home on Redbud Avenue in St. Louis, where they attacked at pre-dawn, and they had many more troops than what you can see right there. And this is one of the armored personnel carriers that they parked in front of my home, and where out of the dark they commanded that the people who live in this house should come out with your hands up and with your hands empty. And my wife and I happened to be up at that time because we were she was planning to work on one of the institutions that you mentioned earlier on that we have created, and it had to do with creating doulas for that would train African women and dealing with childbirth and make childbirth safer for women and African babies in a city in St. Louis, where something like enough babies die in the first year of class, first year of life to fill something like 12 to 15 kindergarten classes. These are comrades, dear comrades, who came out because we held a press conference on the same day. As soon as that happened, we held a press conference shortly after we were able to free ourselves from the zip ties and handcuffs behind our backs. And we held, that's on my porch there. There's Comrade Zaki Baruti, there's Comrade Jesse Todd, who was an alderman at the time. And there are other comrades who part of our movement. That's Comrade Penny Hess standing between me and Zaki Baruti, who was one of the Uhuru Three who was also attacked. And let's see the next slide, please. And as I mentioned, we were tried. We were put on trial. This is the first day of the trial. This trial began September 3rd of 2020 of this year. And this was the first day of that trial. And you can see that there are a number of people who attended that first day of the trial. This is a press conference across the street from the federal courthouse. We couldn't do it on the steps of the federal courthouse because we didn't want to be accused of trying to intimidate jurors who were going to be hearing that case. But there are comrades there from I mentioned the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. There's SNCC veteran Afia Mangaza, who is there. There's Comrade Cam Howard, who plays a major role and has for a long time with the reparations work. There was Jill Stein. There was Comrade Charles Barron, comrades from Union de Barrio, Mexican National Liberation Movement. There's a lot of people who came out in solidarity. And so, and what we're saying is that what happened to us was an assault on the African Liberation Movement. They would, if given an opportunity, they would make it just an attack on the Uhuru Movement, the African People's Socialist Party. But the fact of the matter is that they're doing the same thing with us as they have done with other leaders and movements. This is the indictment that you're seeing here, where it says that the Russians told us to make the demand for reparations, that somehow the Russians are responsible for the reparations demand. And so we mobilized immediately after it happened. This goes against the advice of many lawyers, and everybody tell you to shut up. But we can't shut up because, again, this is an attack on our people. It's not just an attack on Omali Yeshitela, the Uhuru III of the African People's Socialist Party. Here, this food stamps hell. You see, this is something from the 1970s when we were raising the demand for reparations. I'm sorry, 1980s. We were raising demand for 1980s. This is in California. Food stamps hell. Our people are not begging for crumbs. We stand tall with dignity and demand reparations now. African People's Socialist Party. There's nothing related to Russia on there. This is African People's Socialist Party who's taken up the mantle of the struggle of our people. This is 1976. We're talking about the bicentennial with our colonies. We had massive demonstrations in support of Puerto Rican independence, but it's about more than that. It's against colonialism. And it's really important, to make that point. And it's important because we have worked historically to fight against the isolation that this government would impose on our struggle. So Zuckerberg is not going to say anything about us. In fact, it's going to shadow ban so that we can't get heard. The New York Times, the Washington Post, they're not going to say anything about it. 1977, we had written Tactics and Strategies for Black Liberation in the United States, demanding reparations to African people, but also demanding that call for the reunification, the unification of the whole anti-colonial movement in this country that had been crushed militarily, including the attack on the Panthers, Malcolm, our own movement, etc. This movement had been scattered. And it was rudderless now, had no direction. We were fighting, everybody was on a treadmill, running like hell and getting pretty sweaty, but not going anyplace because we had no common trajectory, no common agreed upon trajectory. That's one of the reasons we took on the reparations issue initially. This is 1979, where the party adopted our 14-point platform. And that we see here, point number 11, we want the United States and the international European ruling class and states to pay Africa and African people for the centuries of genocide, oppression, and enslavement of our people. And you notice I said it says genocide there too, because the United States government said that our participation in initiating a campaign to get the United Nations to challenge and charge, investigate the United States for a violation of the 1948 genocide convention by the United Nations for the prevention and punishment of the crime of genocide. That this is 1979, 1952, 51, 52. African people were at the United Nations making this demand, but they claim that the Russians are the one who came up with this, and that's why that was happening. This is why it's important. 1981, our first party Congress resolved to build a reparations movement. That's it. That was at our Congress in 1981. 1982, we had November 13th, 1982, in Brooklyn, New York, we held the first tribunal, international tribunal on reparations for Black people in the United States. And that's a photo there of that. We had our own jurors there. You see the banners of Malcolm and Nkrumah and Garvey. This we did the first time in history that the amount of value stolen from African people was quantified. We came up with a quantification of the amount of value that was stolen, that was owed to African people just for labor alone. There's Queen Mother Moore, who was at the first tribunal we did and was there for many of the other tribunals we did in various other places, including in the state of Florida. So we've been on top of this case for a long time. And this whole notion, again, of Russians somehow being responsible. There's Dorothy Lewis, who became the first real African National Reparation, that should be African National Reparations Organization president. And this is the first time a mass organization was created precisely for the purpose of pushing the issue of reparations and winning support for reparations. I showed you, you saw the PowerPoint where the first tribunal we had, where we had something like 11 or 12 other tribunals following that in different places. Here is the Constitution and bylaws of the African National Reparations Organization, and which was really important. It was a real organization. It existed for 12 years. And we could not win participation, unfortunately, from most of the anti-colonial movement. In fact, our objective in creating the reparations organization and the tribunal was to make it something that was sponsored, that was by the entire anti-colonial movement. Here's 1983, we produced the book, Stolen Black Labor. This is the political economy of domestic colonialism, but it is also the basis of the calculated quantification of the amount of value that was stolen from African people that we use as evidence in the tribunal in 1982. So this was published in 1983. Of course, this is me at the United Nations. We were working and supporting the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azani in particular at the United Nations, where this is where our people in South Africa were living under direct colonial terror that they characterized as apartheid. Give me another slide, please. And this is me with the president, the head of the Irish Republican Socialist Party. This is me in Ireland in 1983, and where I had traveled. Again, part of the whole thing we've been involved in is to break out of this isolation, let the world know what was happening with African people. Go back to that previous slide, please. And this is the Irish Republican Socialist Party. At the time, Ireland was occupied, Northern Ireland was occupied by the British, and direct colonial terror domination there. And this comrade and the Irish Republican Socialist Party greeted me, treated us well, had a national press conference, uniting with our demand for reparations, uniting with our demand that the United States should ratify the UN Convention on Reparations, and telling the Irish people in this press conference that they would not accept any money from any Irish person in the United States who did not support the struggle for African liberation, our demand for reparations. And shortly after that, the British burned the office of the Irish Republican Socialist Party to the ground. Next slide, please. And this is a big mobilization that we had in 1983, the 20th anniversary of the March on Washington. And if you could see it was under the slogan "Bread, Peace, and Black Power." If you could read what was on the yellow portion of that banner, you would see the demand for reparations and the call for forcing the United States to ratify the reparations convention that came out of the United Nations. And And there it is. You know, it's a list of demands: reparations, immediate U.S. Ratification of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, immediate release of all political prisoners and black political prisoners, and prisoners of war. Those are our demands, even back then. And so, again, this whole notion that somehow the Russians came up with this is obviously false. And people who are viewing this now can see that for yourselves. Please, and this is the Uhuru Bakery and Cafe, one of the entities that we created, the Uhuru Bakery and Cafe. This was in Oakland, California. It was an extraordinary entity that we had created. And we had created this in part. We had won solidarity from a sector of the white population who worked directly under our leadership, and their work was to go into the white community, and part of it was to wage the struggle for reparations. Some people try to understand why reparations is becoming such a well-recognized. Here's the Uhuru Solidarity Center that was in Oakland, California, and people try to understand, some of them, why the reparations demand seems to be catching fire in, across ideological and national boundaries inside the United States and other places. And part of it is because we have white people working under our leadership in their own communities in more than 140 cities. And their demand in those cities is reparations. Their demand is to halt the genocide against African people. And their responsibility is to provide political education to white people in their families, in their neighborhoods, on their jobs, and every place else. This is the work that we've been doing, which is one of the reasons two of the people who have been arrested, tried, in this case, Penny Hess, a white woman who is the chair of the African People Solidarity Committee, and Jesse Neville, a white man who is the chair of Uhuru Solidarity Movement. That's the work they do. There's Uhuru Reparations. Here's Uhuru Solidarity. This is white people have been doing this now for years and years, and they want to create the Russians for having done this. No, we did this, and we deployed white people in their own communities as part of our whole strategic process of winning liberation for our people. Next slide, please. And here we are again, build a movement for white people's reparations. And this is probably sometime in the early 1980s. And many of the people you see on there are still a part of the movement today. And I want to say related to that, because people say, well, how are we going to get reparations? How do we know who's, what we're going to do with it, and et cetera, et cetera. We never waited. Our objective was not to wait for the government, not to wait for anything. That's why we put the U.S. on trial, and we used international law as the basis for that. And we raised the reparations. It was a tribunal on reparations, and we've done tremendous amounts of work that they're trying to destroy now. They want to be able to destroy our economic institutions. We have more than 50 economic institutions we've created, and many of these institutions have been created through white people paying reparations voluntarily, paying reparations to African people as a form of self-criticism for how they have participated and benefited from the exploitation and oppression of African people. And this is Tyrone Lewis Community Gym. It was a gym that we opened in St. Petersburg, Florida. And it was a gym named for an African youngster, 18 years old, who had been gunned down, murdered by the St. Petersburg Police Department in 1996. What are we looking at now? And these are, this is the Burning Spear newspaper. We held, this was when this World Conference Against Reparations occurred in South Africa, Durban. We were there, along with other comrades from various places who participated in that. And I see on the side, I cannot see the full photo, but it seems to be a photo representing, I see Comrade Jesse Neville and Comrade Akile Anai, who we ran for office in 2017 and 2019 on reparations platform. First time reparations ever been put on the ballot, and we did it then, and not just reparations, but reparations, and also we put Comrade Aquile's demand had to do with ending gentrification, reversing gentrification that was happening to African people at that time. Next slide, please. Yeah, here are Akile Anai and Jesse Neville, who we ran in 2017 and 2019. And this is the first ever electoral platform for reparations. It happened in St. Petersburg, Florida, in 2017. And this is part of what the government has accused us at doing on the orders from Russia. Next slide, please. And this is, we formed the Black Hispanic Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations. You notice the last name of the organization is Reparations. We did this in 2008. And it was part of the process of bringing the total, as much as we could, of the total liberation movement, anti-colonial movement, pro-independence sector of the movement, self-determination sector of the movement, as distinguished from assimilationist kind of politic. And this is one of the mobilizations that we did, demanding social justice, peace, and reparations for African people. And so this is something we created in 2008. And here you see this. This is something we were charged in 2015. We made this 7-city tour, testifying at United Nations hearings with our Africans Charged Genocide petition. And you see among the people there, Kim Howard, the second from the right, who is a strong and has been a very strong advocate for reparations, built movements, organizations, traveled the world trying to win support for the reparations man for a long period of time. Next to him on the far right is a young woman, Herdosia Kalambai, who we ran for a local office in St. Louis, Missouri. And then, of course, there are comrades who based in St. Louis, who well, actually based in Chicago. And this was one leg of the tour that we did for United Nations hearing that was hosted by Frantz Fanon's daughter. Next slide, please. And this, in 2023, we republished the 1983 book with testimony from the first tribunal on reparations, and we had located some other testimony that did not make it into the first book, and that was included. In fact, we keep finding more testimony that needs to be included. And the reason that's a question is because the place where some of this stuff was kept in Sister Dorothy Lewis's home, or place she occupied, was torched, was burned. And so a lot of it had been lost, or we thought we had lost it. Next slide, please. And here we are. This is the Black Power Reparations Institution, Uhuru Foods and Pies. We built this in the early 80s. It's stronger now than it has ever been under the office of Deputy Chair Ona Zene Yeshitela, who was my wife, who was at the house with me when the FBI attacked at pre-dawn on July 29, 2022. And these are the pies that we sell with the Uhuru pies and et cetera. And we do that in St. Louis. We do that in St. Petersburg, Florida. We do that. And people can get information on that as well. But our economic development programs continue. And this is one of the things that's under attack too, because what we show is that we can do it ourselves. I mean, it's not the United States government that's created these these projects, these programs to end the so-called food deserts that exist in our community. We did it. It's not Walmart. We did it. And the Walmarts and the United States government are opposed to us being successful in being able to take care of ourselves, which is one of the things that the reparations demand is designed to do as well. Next slide, please. And this is St. Louis, Missouri. And you can see here the before and after pictures, because this is the Black Power blueprint. And we've been building the Black Power blueprint since 2018. And you see on top the before picture. These were abandoned buildings, had been empty for years, and we bought these buildings. And on the right, we tore them down because there was no way to maintain them. They couldn't be salvaged. And we built an event space there. And there's the red, black, and green, 50 feet high, flying above that space. And then on the left there is the Uhuru House. And this is on West Florissant in St. Louis, one of the most oppressed, exploited sectors of the population, economically depressed sector of the city of St. Louis. Next slide, please. And this is the basketball court. This is Black Power Blueprint basketball court. And it's called Black Power Vanguard. And this was not by the city government, the U.S. government. We did that. The people paid for that with reparations resources. People said, we want to pay reparations as a part of a self-criticism we want to make to the African community. And this is something that's happened under the leadership of the Uhuru movement, which comprises not only our party, but various other entities that are influenced ideologically by the African People's Socialist Party. So this was the grand opening of that basketball court. Next slide, please. And this is a picture of when we were doing the doula. These are women who participate in the doula program, and they are with the yellow second from the left with the yellow standing is Dr. Aisha Fields, who presided over that first doula training that we did. Happened on the same morning as the FBI was attacking our homes in St. Louis and our built offices in St. Louis. This was being planned, and this actually happened that morning. And these young women went through this doula training program. And not only did we train them to be doulas, but we trained them to be able to establish their own businesses as doulas. This is the African People's Socialist Party Uhuru movement that took this on. Next slide, please. And this is the building I was showing you where we had knocked them down, and actually we created gardens there, community gardens for the people. We give away food. We've given away thousands of pounds of fresh produce right there in this impoverished sector of the African population. And these are people who volunteer. These are volunteers who come out to work in this project. Next slide, please. And this is a picture of we had initiated the marketplace. And it was the One Africa, One Nation marketplace. And there's the red, black, and green flag flying there. There are people coming out vending and people coming out purchasing from the vendors there. And I should mention, this is one of two marketplaces. We have a major market in Philadelphia where at least 100 vendors feed their families or contribute to their income there, and African people is a major cultural center as well. Next slide, please. And this is the Mafundi Lake Center, if you will. It's a housing, a fourplex that we purchased. We got this fourplex because we wanted to create a situation where we can provide we have an African International workforce program for African men and women who coming out of prison, and they have to have a place to stay so that we can train them in the culinary arts and how to run businesses there. And it's the Richard Mafundi Lake, and this is the dedication ceremony. And you cannot see her because she's partially hidden behind these flowers on this banister, she's seated there. As this is Carolyn Lake, Mafundi Lake's wife, widow, who performed, musically there and brought her family there to participate in this grand opening. Can we go to the next slide, please? And so that's it. And we're just saying that we hope that this was helpful in terms of help people getting a sense of who we are, what we do, and just how ridiculous and criminal, almost we would say, the attack the United States government is making, and to make it clear that this is not an attack on Omali Yeshitela, the Uhuru Three, or the Uhuru Movement and African People's Socialist Party, but it's an attack on African people. So on December 16th, we're calling on people to be in Tampa, Florida, and let the system, let the court knows that we recognize that this is attack is about us. That's an attack on us, that this has nothing to do with Russia. And if it did have something to do with Russia, the United States should be ashamed of itself. Because if you're saying that the Russians want African people to have reparations, but you don't, if you're saying that the Russians want African people to have economic development in the communities, but you don't, if you're saying all of these things, then it's something that's shameful. It's not something that you should be proud of. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Wow. Okay, you covered a lot of ground. And like I said, some of the things I know I wanted to dig in deeper, but I don't want us to leave this show with people not being very, very clear on the court case. I know you talked about it in the beginning. You just talked about it somewhat now. But I just think, I just want people to leave this show with knowing exactly what the status is, why they need to show up in Tampa. You said on December the 16th, and exactly, what are the, what's the, say call to action for our people to support you, and then we can maybe get one or two more questions in after that.
On December 16th, the United States government, they failed in their attempt to convict us of being Russian agents. The jury, even though they had got rid of the only African juror who was seated there, the jury saw through that. They saw, and the only humans who testified, there were no human testimony. All the testimony came from 12 FBI agents and 2 so-called Russian experts who testified, and they used over and over again. They took something from us, and that was the equivalent of 2.5 million books in terms of terabytes of materials that they took from us, and they just kept putting in a loop something like 5 different emails that popped up that they wanted to make mean something that it didn't mean, or they wanted to interpret something that would provide a misinterpretation. So there was a 10-year sentence attached to a Russian for working for Russia. They lost that, but they were able to convict us on being involved in a conspiracy to do something that never happened, which was working for Russia. So this is the extraordinary kind of conviction and that's punishable by 5 years. So when we go to court on December 16th, it's for the purpose of being sentenced. And that they will sentence us from any place from probation or something to 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine for each of us. This is what we are looking at. And this is the way that the United States will exonerate itself, if possible, for all the offenses and crimes against African people. If they had won on the first one, it would mean that any criticism that Black people make of our treatment can be characterized as not true because somebody else told us to say this, or it's we're working for some other entity, some other government. So that's really important. So on December 16th, Tampa, Florida, go to Hands Off Uhuru. That's uhuru.org, and you can get information. That's going to be a court in Tampa, Florida, November 16th. When we had the trial, they had to use the largest courtroom they had, and then overflow portion of it. We want to make that happen again. We want everybody to not be able to deny. The truth of the matter is that this is an attack on African people, and the world is watching, and we know it. That's going to be really, really important for us. On the 15th, we are going to be having a rally in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is right across the bridge from from Tampa, Florida, where the trial is going to be held. So people can get there 15th and 16th. That would be incredibly significant, incredibly important. And then we have a reparations telethon, which is the 6th annual 24-hour telethon. And this is a benefit for the Black Power Blueprint, and that's on Giving Tuesday. So you can get information on this as well. You can register at tinyurl.com/reparations telethon 2024, and it's on the slide there. So please participate in these things. This is part of our fight back, your fight back, Uhuru.
We support you. We support the family. Let me ask this question. I got a feeling it might take a little bit, but I want to go ahead and put it out there. So, in terms of looking at reparations, I know a lot of times people talk about, reparations from the perspective of money and being spent and all of that kind of stuff. And I know also in this country, they've done a very good job at making socialism be a bad word, and most people don't even really understand what socialism is. So I just wanted to ask you, what do you think is like the connection between socialism and reparations?
Well, that's a good question. And it's one that most of the white left needs to deal with, because they call themselves socialists, but the primary contradiction existing for socialism is recognition that we live in a society, it's global society, where there is social production, socialized production of value, but private ownership. So the people come together to produce. There's nothing that's produced just by an individual. Society produces, but individuals and private ownership from companies, corporations, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the fundamental contradiction. So what we have to do, the genuine socialists should see the reparations demand is the first thing they should jump on. It's the first thing they should jump on, because who are the reparations of socialism fight for the empowerment of the working class. And what has been the most critical workers force, not only in this country but in the world, that developed this society, then this economy, the society, than African people. We are the workers. So Uhuru, as quickly as I could, and I think that was relatively inefficient, but that's the basic thing. It's a demand that any legitimate socialist should. Socialism and capitalism cannot coexist. Mm-hmm. And just like modes of production, one mode of production replaces a mode of production as a part of the process of social development. And the same thing is true. People who claim to hate capitalism then should jump on this bandwagon, because this is the Achilles heel of the whole capitalist system, because everything that has been produced has been done on the backs of enslaved Africans and other people whose resources have been stolen from this in this parasitic social system. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Yeah, and I just wanted to also acknowledge, in that presentation, fantastic presentation, pictures worth 1,000 words, that you're able to document and tell your story. I think, you've shown how this movement and how your work has, attacked it from intellectual level, from the ideological level, from international level, and also from the real practical level in terms of building, housing, in terms of bakeries and doula training, all of that. So really appreciate that. And we've been getting we've gotten a few comments in the chat as well from some people also wanting to acknowledge you and acknowledge the work of your movement. So let's just close out with you giving whatever closing words that you want to leave us with. That's important for us to move forward in this movement. Give us some words of encouragement for reparations and in this time that we find ourselves in.
This is an extraordinary moment in history, and I am very, very excited. I know we are facing prison on December 16th and an attempt to steal all the resources that we've created, that being the case, but it's their contradiction. They are locked into a very desperate kind of situation. It makes it necessary for them to violate damn near everything they say they stand for: Bill of Rights, freedom of speech, all those things, because every attack they made on us is based on speech, well, and in terms of the legality of the thing. So I think that's really important. And again, I want to express my appreciation to you and to the work that you are doing, and call on everybody to come and see us. Come and see us in St. Louis. I'm telling you what we've done. You need to see it, because people don't believe in it. They hear the discussion. It sounds all right, but you need to see it. Come and see it. We invite you. And just based on what you just said, theory is meaningless if it cannot be implemented. If it can't implement it, if you can't put it into practice, it's worthless. It's not worth anything. And that's the reason that we're under attack, not because we have some ideas, but because we are implementing these ideas in the world. So I want everybody to be able to come in and come to Tampa, Florida, come to St. Petersburg, Florida. Let's fill up the courtroom. And let's have this magnificent rally in St. Petersburg, Florida on the 15th. And I want to also acknowledge the significance of what we've done in terms of breaking this thing so that white people can find their place and possibly regain their own humanity in the process of rectifying crimes they've committed against the peoples of the world, and especially against African people. So thank you so much, Comrade Jimoke, and the other comrade. And please forgive me, I don't remember your name. It's a Joe Biden moment. But thank you so much for having us on. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Thank you so much, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And, we also, we recognize that we do this work and we have support. We recognize, as you mentioned, the brother does a tech for us, his brother Major Davis, and thank you for supporting us and with the slides and all the work that you do to promote this podcast. We also want to thank your assistant, Sister Akanga, who was the intermediary and facilitated communications between us so that we could have everything run smoothly for this show. We would like to also thank Brother Cam Howard, who makes this show possible, and through Reparations United, and also helped to make us the introduction between us and you in the African Socialist Party, Workers Socialist Party. So we thank you, the African People's Socialist Party. So we thank all of those people, and we thank everybody who's given us a comment. I see Sister Shakira in the chat, Sister Allison, Black Power Blueprint, and any others that I missed. So we thank you. Thank you for this very historic show. And like I said, perhaps in the future, we want to do a part 2, and we will be there in Florida to support you and to support this movement. It's very important that we do this as a people. And thank you for your shining example, your 83 years of dedication and work on this planet. We appreciate you. We love you. This is Brother Jimoke Ifetayo, Reparations Now. Reparations now, reparations now, reparations now.